Hey, this is Mike Cazayoux, and you're listening to the Brute Strength Podcast. This week, I'm back with legendary coach Dan John. We talk philosophy, principles of strength and conditioning, and building good habits. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that registration for our program, Brute Body, is open now until September 17th. The program is broken down into 4 90-day blocks, specifically designed to get you stronger and change your body composition. So adding lean muscle mass, burning fat. It comes with 4 different diet options, coaching, a community, a ton of different resources to help you stay on track and stay consistent on the program. So if you're interested, head to brutestrengthtraining.com/programs/brute-body. That's brutestrengthtraining.com/programs/brute-body. Enjoy the show. Hey, this is Mike Cazayoux, and this is the Brute Strength Podcast. Coach, thanks for having me back, man. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, yeah, thanks for being here. I'm sorry about the little mix-up this morning.
Not a problem at all. So I want to start out. The last time we met, I had this sense that when you speak, and this is going to sound like I'm kind of blowing smoke up your ass, I'm sure, but you speak in, it just sounds like truth. It sounds like wisdom. And it's, I was telling Nelson on the way over here, a lot of what you say is going to be true in 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. It's very simple concepts, principles. Where does that come from? Is it something that you were taught by a mentor or you're reading or?
Yeah, that's my whole education. I was really quite lucky. When I was going through school, we still did the great books. So now the downside is I never read any childhood books. So I've been catching up in my adult life. But, so when I was young, you'd read a book like The Count of Monte Cristo and the whole section on learning. So my whole background is from the great books. And then in college, I studied history and I had phenomenal professors who understood it, and I'll get to the point in just a minute. And then, of course, I slid into religious studies and theology. And the one thing that when you start studying those fields, history and theology, religious studies, you start to get this sense of timelessness. If you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the great, Akkadian myth, the same things come up in this story. The alewife says, look at the child that is holding your hand. These things alone are the concern of men. Look. In other words, here, look at the children. Look at the future. He's chasing immortality. Which is something that shows up throughout. Right. So one of the great things that, in my background anyway, when I did my first master's, I focused on Beowulf, and it was interesting when you read Beowulf. And I'm answering your question, is that warriors live in the pure present. Like Nelson here, one of the hard things about coaching high school kids is that they live right now. And you tell them, this is your last football season. You'll never play again. But no, you're wrong. And then the heartbreak that hits them on the last game of their senior year when they realize you'll never play again.
Right.
And if you do, this will never happen again. And yet, when you read Beowulf, the kings always speak in past, present, and future. So I've been kind of lucky in my career because I was a warrior. I was a warrior. And all you got to do is look at the scars on my body, up and down everywhere, the number of surgeries I've had. I was a warrior. I wanted to win. I would do anything to win. There's these pictures on the wall over there, okay? It's no big deal. It's AP, Associated Press, did a little article about me, my junior year in college. Well, why? Because 2 weeks before those pictures, I got hit in the head with a discus. I had a massive concussion. The funny thing about those pictures, I don't remember any of that. But I got up just after getting plunked in the head with a discus at about 145 feet, got up and started competing again because I lived in the pure present. Mm-hmm. Now, the upside is I'm 60 now. So now I can sit there and I can look at Danny and Joe, my grandkids, and say, I'm not going to see everything they go through in life. I'm hoping I can see them through high school, college, and that's not 20 years. I'd like to be at their weddings. I hope they get married younger than old. But it's getting obvious to me that I'm not going to be around for huge events in their life. Mm-hmm. Decisions I make this week in the weight room and at the dining table are going to impact, and walking around and make sure I wear my seatbelt and all that, wear a helmet when I'm throwing the discus, I guess. These decisions I'm making today are going to impact whether I go to their weddings or not. And some of the decisions I made when I was younger impact me today positively and negatively. So I think I had a real opportunity in my college life, in my academic life, to learn these lessons. So what can I say? I mean, someone made fun of me online not long ago. It kind of hurt my feelings, really, because I always make this joke in my workshop. If you want to get stronger, lift weights. Mm-hmm. If you're tired, sleep. If you're thirsty, drink water. And I laugh about that because everything I just said is absolutely true. It's not sexy and you can't make money off of it. And it's not groovy and it won't excite some 16-year-old boy in Iowa who wants to get another 3 inches on his peak bicep. But it's truth. And so sometimes what happens is, and I think it's the job of people as they slide into different phases. I wonder how many more phases of life I have. I'm not being negative. You have to look at the calendar and realize these things. Is that it's my job to be the big kid and say, this is going to happen really fast. I've been lifting weights since 65, I've been coaching since 79, and I have worked with a lot of people, and I have tried to tell them, this too shall pass. This is coming to an end. It's funny, the best discus thrower I ever worked with is now a professor, and when I finished with him, it was 21 years ago.
Wow.
I mean, what? That's so you get to the point one day where you realize that, time passes, as do we, and I've had a lot of water go under my bridge, and so what you got to do as a big kid is say, this is real, this is true, and I appreciate your point, Michael, very much, but I'd like to think that anybody's been around this long. My own coach, Dick Notmeyer, who still calls me up about once a month. He's 85, 86 now. And he still tells me, Dan, are you eating your protein? Yes, I am. And make sure are you still lifting weights? Yes, I am. And make sure you do something like, ride a bike or something.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I started working with him in 1975, and he's still telling me the same basic points.
Right.
So, there you go.
What are a couple of the best resources for those timeless principles that, maybe the books you read or different resources?
Well, I have a weekly newsletter called Wandering Weights, and right now I've decided to do this thing just this week. The book that changed my life was T.H. White's The Sword and the Stone, and it's a book about learning, and it's about Merlin, of course, and his job is to teach young King Arthur stuff. So it's a book that's in love with learning. But what's great about the book is at the end, all those lessons tie together so he can pull the sword out of the stone. And if you read that particular part, it's weightlifting. Mm-hmm. So I would always tell people start with the sword and the stone because the author, White, makes it so easy to see the lessons. Another place I would try, I wouldn't read Joseph Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces because that's probably it might be a little hard going, but the interviews he had with Joseph Campbell's interviews with Bill Moyer called The Power of Myth. And he summarizes Eastern, Western, every Polynesian, every world, the legends, the myths, the religions, however you want to call them, into one great template for you over 8 parts. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I think it's not a bad idea to go all the way back to Gilgamesh. And in Gilgamesh, you'll see the book of Genesis. And then, of course, I think you should read Genesis. And then from there, why not read a Beowulf? Why not read some big kid books that are a little difficult? But those are kinds of things you'll sit there as you read them, and it might not hit you. Mm-hmm. It might not hit you the first time. There's a very good book. It's by David Denby, and the book is called Great Books. And he went back to college as an adult and reread the classics in a classroom setting. And it's fascinating to read. So when you're a 24-year-old, when you're a 19-year-old, a high school kid, and you read Genesis 22, where Abraham has to kill Isaac, you read it and you flip the page, and the teacher says, "What did you think?" When you're a father and you think you have to kill your own child, the story completely changes. He goes back and reads King Lear while his mother is going through dementia. Reading King Lear as a high school kid or a college kid, you're reading it because teacher said so. But when you read King Lear and your own mother's going through dementia, the world changes. Mm-hmm. If you ever get a chance, go back to read some of the first resources you read in whatever field you're at. So if in weightlifting, whatever book or magazine article you picked up first, reread it through the lens of your experience.
Right.
And it'll be funny because you might have missed everything the author said. The author might have said, you need to do sled work, farmer walks, and run hills. But you got out of it easy curl bar, skull crushers, alternating concentration curl. Mm-hmm. Wait, how did you get that out of that article? Because that's the lens you were reading it through. So that's one of the important things I think about. So my old boss, the late Archbishop George Niederauer, we had this great conversation one time, and he told me rereading is the key.
Wow.
Rereading. And he said, you'll always be shocked that even every decade, he'll say, it's funny how the books change. Mm-hmm. Every decade you get older. And the point being, the books didn't change.
Right.
You changed. So there's real value to it. I mean, every so often I humble myself. I say that's kind of a joke. That's a joke, folks. But I humble myself and I go do a 2 or 3 day workshop as a participant. Mm-hmm. So last year I did Fit Ranks with Nick Rains. And for 2 days, they taught us the kettlebell swing, which
you've done before.
On paper, I'm pretty good at. They taught us back squats, front squats, and all this stuff. And I was in a classroom setting doing all this with, sometimes in some cases, people knew who I was, sort of, not just my name tag, but also what I do for a living. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, when I go back and do a workshop, my lens changes. I hear things better when the 10th time around, if that makes sense to you.
Right. Yeah. Last time we briefly talked about, you mentioned becoming a slave to your habits.
Become a slave to good habits, yeah.
How do there are so many people in today's world that are very undisciplined, maybe more than ever, very entitled, just in the generation that we're growing up in. How do you take an undisciplined, entitled person and turn them into a disciplined person?
Well, it depends. I mean, if they're my competition, I want them to stay exactly as they are.
Right.
I want my opponents to be the sloppiest, most undisciplined people in the world. The way I do it now is I took a phrase from Rob Wolf. It's called shark habits. 1 bite and you're done. And what you try to do is consciously go out of your way. For example, you'll notice I answer emails right away. Mm-hmm. That's funny. I answer emails and then I don't pay attention. But I answer them right away. I answer phone calls right away. I tell you really very quickly yes or no, right? Mm-hmm. So if I open an email, I answer the email. If I open a letter, I deal with the letter. If you send me a wedding invitation, I decide then and there if I go or not. And if I can't, I go online and I send you the present. If I can, I RSVP it and I take care online, whatever. So those are shark habits. In both cars there, in the front left pocket are dental floss sticks. So when I drive around, I floss my teeth because you're supposed to floss your teeth twice a day. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't have the discipline to do it in the morning, but it's very easy for me to floss my teeth while I drive around doing silly errands. So that's a shark habit to me.
So what's the shark about? I don't get that.
1 bite, and it's done.
Okay.
A shark.
Got it.
Big chomp, and it's done. And that's the most important thing. And again, it's not that these are unimportant things. They're important. But if you have the vision of just take care of it, don't let things build up. I always tell people, when in doubt, front squat first in a workout. Well, why? Why front squat? Well, then you've done, if you did your front squats, you took care of most of what you probably need to do. Mm-hmm. We often now Turkish get up at the beginning of the workout because we find that is a very valuable thing for where we're at in our training world right now. So shark habits is, well, how do I work out every day at 9:30? Because I tell the whole world, literally the whole world, come to my house at 9:30. We'll work out together. In a few minutes, you're going to meet two people from Scotland who took me up on this. Now, here's the funny thing. There are people who live within a mile who are probably sleeping right now and said, woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Right.
The way I deal with it is I tell the world, 9:30, show up at my house, we'll work out.
I think you might have some visitors after this. I hope
no,
so.
I won't. Nope. Because here's another shark habit. Do you have a menu for dinner?
No.
There you go. You have to have a menu so you know how to shop.
Right.
I would suggest 2 crock-pot meals a week, because in the morning you get up and you make dinner. If you already make dinner, you're not going to make bad decisions at 6 o'clock because it's already sitting there waiting for you to eat. So those are all shark habits. Another one, I always fill up when the car's half full, half empty. Always. It's just a shark habit I have. I see it half, I just go fill it up. Because I always have time when the gas tank is 3/4 or half. And I'm always in a rush when it's on empty. So I've learned over time. These are shark habits. The second part to help you is something I got from Pat Flynn. They're called pirate maps. And he has this belief that most people don't want, and I've got them all over my house and gym, books. They just tell me what you need. Just tell me. So his idea is that what a pirate map is it says, go to St. John's Island, find the white coconut tree, take 7 paces to the west, dig 6 feet down. There's the treasure. So his idea is, number 1, 2 hours before you go to sleep, put on your blue blocking glasses, take your nighttime supplements, your fish oil, your vitamin D, whatever. Try to finish watching TV, read a book, take a hot tub, cool down. Sleep, number 2, sleep in the darkest room you can possibly sleep in at a perfect temperature. Have the coffee made the night before. So when you wake up to the coffee machine going off. Not 2 to 3 days a week, lift weights. 2 to 3 days a week, get sweaty. I don't know, eat protein, eat veggies, drink water. Well, that's it.
Right.
If you just did that, you'd be okay. That's a pirate map. Now, the devil's in the details, and everybody who doesn't do any of that stuff will argue, well, what do you mean by get sweaty? But the idea is, for big kids, you give them pirate maps. Now, if you don't mind me just going a little deeper, but most people want from someone like myself a program, or they want a diet, and those are nonsense. Programs, most people programs are these short-term little things. It's not a way of life. It's not a lifestyle. Diets, by the way, programs and diets both work, but it's not a way to set up a lifetime of health and attempting to achieve goals, fitness goals, okay? And then, of course, on top of that pyramid is a thing called performance. And if you look around the gym, you'll see a lot of pictures of people performing. Performing is when they call your name, you step in, either in the football game or the Hammer Ring or the Highland Games field, and you perform. And the mistake I think we make in our field, the fitness industry, is most people, they want to learn from performance athletes. Well, okay, that's fine, except, when I threw the discus far, I was massively asymmetrical. I posted a picture the other day my sister sent me in college. It's so obvious. My right arm is, sorry about the car.
Okay.
My right arm is hanging down so much larger than my left, and I had a weird little limp because I was so asymmetrical. Well, you make a deal with the devil when you want to be a high-level athlete. And that's a hard thing to teach these young guys, young guys and girls. So sometimes we're trying to learn what these performance guys are, but that doesn't apply to Edna who wants to lose 10 pounds for her daughter's wedding or whatever. So I think the problem we have in the fitness industry is we keep putting the wrong tool. We're trying to hammer nails with a wrench. We're using the wrong tools for the wrong job.
Right.
So the first thing I try to get people to do is, listen, before we even talk about 5 sets of 2 or 5 sets of 3 or whether you should have 20 grams of whey protein or not, when's the last time you flossed? When's the last time you went to a dentist? So let's take care of those big ticket items that are very easy to deal with. What do you do with the dentist? You lay down and you sit there like this for half an hour to an hour. Let's take care of it. When's the last time you went to a physical checkup? Mine was last week. I have an annual physical I go to every year. Of course, Trinity 60 has got some bad news. We'll save that for off camera because they do some unsavory tests to you, which aren't as fun as they sound. From there, let's just set up a pirate map. Can we have you sleep better? Can we have you drink more water? Can we get you just to show up 2 days, 3 days a week? From there,
the training program is just one small piece of that pirate map.
Yeah.
Right.
From there, we can talk about a program when you have a specific need you need to fix. If you have weak thighs, maybe we put you on the Soviet squat program. If you need to improve your hinge, maybe we have you teach the kettlebell swing or deadlift. If you're going to compete, well, then we'll talk about that separately too. But most people just take all that, whirl it in a blender and say, hi, you're Edna. We're going to, some woman my age comes into your gym and you decide to train her like she's getting ready for a professional fitness contest. Well, first we got to dial down your diet, 6 meals a day, chicken breast and broccoli. Well, God bless her for showing up in the gym.
Right.
And then you put her on this program of 6 days a week with this. Really, that's overkill, but it happens all the time.
Right.
I got to apologize. When I first coached people, I only had one tool. It was the Olympic lifts. And it was my answer to all questions.
Mm-hmm.
You were a hurdler, Olympic lift. Thrower, Olympic lift. Football player, Olympic lift. Funny thing is, it wasn't a bad tool, but it took me a while to figure out how to ratchet that tool into a much more appropriate way of doing things.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds like the pirate map is what some coaches like Coach Wooden would call the process, right? You're creating your own process for performance, or in a lot of cases, just life in general, a successful life in general.
Well, so for on performance, as a discus thrower, performance comes down to throw far. Is there any more? No. So anything that makes me throw far is right. Anything that doesn't make me throw far is wrong. If you are a Wooden, he would agree with that, but he would also put in those other layers of things too. So yeah, you're right. So for an elite athlete, and I see this as a quadrant. So for an elite athlete, I would talk to them about getting things off the table, shark habiting as much as you can in life, and then focusing on what we're trying, the goal we're trying to achieve. If we need to fix certain problems, then we'd slide over to 3 to 6 week programs. For the rest of people, I would still say get stuff off the table, and then 2 to 3 days a week get sweaty, 2 to 3 days a week lift weights.
Right.
If you're in a team sport, the rules would change a little bit. But, John Heisman, who, of course, the Heisman Trophy is named after, in 1931 said, football is block, tackle, and fall on the ball. And you know what? The game hasn't changed at all since then. So sometimes even something as complex as American football can be summed pretty simply. I talked to a very famous basketball coach, and he gave me a three-part list. I talked to a fighter pilot. He gave me 3 lists. Anybody at the top of the game, they'll tell you how to win by going zip.
Simple.
You zip.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
I know that you spent some time with a sports psychologist at the Olympic Training Center.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what that kind of initial experience was? And then I want to go into more about sports.
Well, the most genius thing that they did for me and the group I was with is they asked us to write down the 10 greatest moments in your athletic career. And it's weird because I got all the way to 22 without even slowing down. Because it was just like you would think of one thing and would branch into another.
Sure.
It would just bounce, And it was funny because I'd go back to getting the winning hit. See that trophy? There's a trophy right over there. It says SV67, the little teeny one.
Yep.
That's from 1967. I hit the winning run to get that trophy for my team.
Nice.
My batting average was 0-0-0 up until that game. But that is one of the most important things of my life. And it reminded me about an 8th grade thing. It reminded me about another thing. The other guys, were talking about this later on that night. The other guys were saying, it was weird because, this big championship they won was number 9. But it was a 6th grade thing that happened was number 2. And this thing that happened, now here's the interesting thing. From there, they had us write down the 10 worst things that have happened either in your life or your sports career. And man, everyone kind of slid their hand. Everyone got real tight and close, and they wrote real small. And then here's the genius of it. He then stops and he looks at it and he goes, now, put your finger on the worst thing that ever happened. Okay. And everyone's kind of like, okay. All right. Now slide over. And the weirdest thing, and this is what the prophet Hilda Brown basically said too. We can quote him in just a minute, but it slides right over. So the worst moments of your life lead you to the best moments. Over and over.
Wow.
And you slide down this list. And what you realize is you got to quit judging what's bad or good. Yeah, you might have bombed at the Olympic Games. Hold on, movie's not over. 30 years from now, that might have been the best thing that happened to you. I was shocked at how many terrible things that happened to me in life turned out to be in so many ways really good things.
That's fascinating.
And it was so illuminating that I made that part of my teaching in the academic classroom throughout the rest of my career.
I want to keep going here, but first, do you think that, because you were an elite athlete, and if the people that were at the training center were also elite athletes, do you think that psychological, the ability to take those challenges and turn them into triumphs, is that unique to that's a successful trait, and I think a lot of people allow it to bring them down and lead them to quit.
Okay, so I get where you're going. I hate to say, is this a chicken or the egg question?
Could be, yeah.
So my roommate was Anthony Washington, world champion in the discus throw. I think he might be the last American world champion. He might be. Great thrower. I guess what you're asking, it's a good question. Are we elite because we're just too dumb to stop? We just keep going at it? Or does success leave tracks? And that's actually a principle I try to work with my athletes on. It's in my new book, Now What? Great athletes, great coaches, don't judge things until it's all over. It's a lesson I learned about teaching high school kids. So high school kids I first taught are in their mid-50s now, okay? So I'll bump into them at parties and social events. And sometimes, the kid with all the glitz and glamour is a life failure. And sometimes the kid, you're like, you're a what now? Wow. And they'll say, you know what? You changed my life. I just had this a couple weeks ago. A student called me up and he wanted to read all my books. And I go, you know this is Dan John, your teacher. You called me Mr. John, right? I yelled at you every day for 4 years. And he goes, yeah, you were in my ear constantly. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And he goes, I didn't appreciate it until one day I was sitting there and it was like, God, it was because you cared. I was like, well, yeah, I cared. But so this young man, complete life change from where he was. He's just in a great place. So the thing I try to teach athletes is never judge something good or bad. It doesn't matter, because until the last throw comes in, until it's all over, and then maybe 20 years later, then you judge it good or bad.
Right.
Because, man, you just don't know. I make my living winning on my last throw. Talk to my throwing friends, and they'll just tell you, we're at the Nationals a couple of years ago, and my buddies elbow each other. And they said, and the guy from Colorado says, he goes, Danny is just doing this to keep us interested. Because I was behind by about an inch, and I won by 17 feet. It was one of those things but the reason we do that is we practice it constantly. I bring this up all the time. Lindsay, my daughter, Nelson knows, she won the state championship on her last throw, the last throw she ever made in high school, with a personal record. Well, it's not by surprise. It's because we practice it, because we're constantly saying, well, the phrase, this is a terrible phrase, but you are not good enough to be frustrated. Sorry, you can't be frustrated. You're not good enough. You haven't worked hard enough. When you've been throwing the discus 25 years and you're having a bad day, I'll allow you to swear and throw things. But if you've been throwing the discus 2.5 weeks, shut up, get back in the ring. You're not good
Still
enough.
learning.
And we talk about constantly about how are you going to overcome the pressure? How are you going to overcome that? But think about the life lesson that gives you, not judging. Because there's probably not a person in the audience who hasn't had their heart broken. And yet you look back on that, how terrible you felt. You might even laugh at it today. It's like, oh, if I could just sit me down for 5 minutes, then I'd tell them, oh, you're so glad to be away from that person. What a blessing is. Run screaming, you know. So it's a great life lesson. You just, we have 2 family mottos here in this house, and my daughters will quote them to me all the time. It's not where you start, it's where you finish. You know, I was undersized, and everybody kept trying to push me away from being a thrower and all these different things. It was like, no, I really like this. You know, and you look back on it, and I started throwing in 1970. So what is that, 5 years ago? That's a joke, okay. It's not where you start, it's where you finish. You know, my wife and I, when we first started, we had a hard time, you know, affording the basics of life. And now we're very comfortable, you know, because it's not where you start, it's where you finish. Our other family motto is make a difference. And so the lens that we look at everything is, will this make a difference? So my wife and I are very generous with our time, treasure, and talents because we try to make a difference in this world. You know, people ask me why I have a free gym. It's because I think it makes a difference. And of course, I hate to say this, but I get back so much more than I give away. The more it's the weirdest thing, the weirdest lesson I've learned in the universe. The more you give, the more you get back.
Right.
It's hard to explain that to people because it doesn't work with Adam Smith's concept of capitalism, but it works in the real world. So I hope I answered your questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is yet another timeless principle whereby taking, you know, the biggest challenges in our life, we have an opportunity to learn from them and to catapult us forward rather than keeping us down.
Exactly. And, you know, it's kind of nice to see, I got a local friend here named Ben who's decided to be pretty honest about his condition. You know, he was a high-level bobsledder. He was a great thrower himself. And he's really dealing with really difficult cancer. So he decided to start blogging about it. And I got to tell you, you know, his insights on this blog about dealing with cancer are genius. You know, so is cancer a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I mean, we got to say it's a bad thing, but the gifts that he's bringing us from this fight are these. It's changing lives. You know, he works on the hotline, so he answers the phone, and someone will call and say, "I just found out I had blood cancer," and they'll be on tears. And Ben answers the phone, and Ben, "Hey, I've been there. I've done that. By the way, if there's coaching 101, I've been there. I've done that. I've been, you know, don't worry. We're going to get through this." It's funny, the word coach, people even forget what the word means. It comes from the word coach. It's that little thing on wheels that takes people through on a road. The job of a coach, you said you wanted this, hop on, here's the road. That's what coach means. And some of the best coaching I've seen in my life is when, in your down times especially, hop on. I've got this. Yeah, that's great coaching.
That's awesome.
Hey, it's easy to be a coach when they win the state championship. It's real hard to be a coach when they bomb. That's what coaching does.
Last time you mentioned I don't know if it was a coach you had or something, but the rule was if an athlete missed a clean and jerk or missed a snatch, an Olympic lift, he was done for the day. And what we were talking about last time was arousal. And you know, part of the reason that this person did that was to make sure that the athletes had the right state of arousal. They took every lift seriously. And then on the other side, one thing that I had mentioned that, you know, you said you would kind of consider was this piece about confidence and protecting people's confidence. So I'm wondering how important do you think confidence is in general in sport, and how do you build on it?
Well, you know, fake it until you make it is what I teach my young kids. fake like you're confident until you are. Confidence is one of those words that it's like we know what it means, but confidence is a tough one for me because it's a very difficult thing to coach. It's a very difficult thing because for me, I became confident when I started throwing 10,000 times a year. When I snatched 200, I became confident. When I snatched 226, I became more confident. When I snatched 264, I became more confident. And when I snatched 314, I became even more confident. Now, what was happening here? Well, my confidence was based on reality. But so here's the thing. This is the duality of coaching. So I need to make sure we're investing in your standards. I got to make sure you're looking at charts going, I am better. I have put the time in. I have put the work in. I've seen these situations. I have appropriate arousal. I have appropriate tension, the right heart rate. I can control my heart rate if I need to. I can control my arousal. I can control my tension. I'm in control. In the discus, you're giving me 3 throws. That's 2 more than I need to win this thing. That's when you start. But on the other side, we also have to. So that's the realistic thing. But the other side is going to come from you too. So you have to practice. You have to practice being confident. That's another great lesson I learned from, the thing I loved about my coach, Dick Notmeyer, he had just such a good way of saying things. Like I remember sometimes the guys would start working their guns, and guns are for girls or something like that. What's the phrase? Guns for girls?
Curls for
girls or whatever, guns for girls, whatever. And he said something funny one time. He said, if you practice basic hygiene and learn how to dance, you'll do much better with the women than by having big arms. Mm-hmm. I love that kind of thing. And his whole point, what was interesting about Dick is once I got an insight into being more successful on the platform in the discus ring, all of a sudden my GPA started rising. I'm one of the few people, I think, maybe it happens to others, but I had a good GPA. So I had a 3.5 in high school, good solid GPA. I jumped up to 3.9 in college. I jumped up to 4 at junior college. I jumped up to 4.0 at Utah State. Part of the reason was that I felt so confident about this aspect of my life. I could go into a test and it became like a competition between me and the professor. Oh, you emphasize that. Okay, I get this. That's what's on the test. This thing you said twice, And it really changed my whole life. And, I never dated or anything until once I started getting to a certain place. And all of a sudden I became more confident. So the confidence is a tough one. Do you remember when you first learned how to drive? And how freakishly scary everything was?
Right.
Blinker. Remembering to turn on the blinker and you had to look at the signal. Did you ever learn how to gears? Your age group. Okay. Right. So most young people don't know how to use gears. But
I'm from Louisiana.
Okay. So when you're trying to learn to drive, plus change gears, plus deal with all these other people around. 20, 30 years later, you're trying to help someone learn how to drive. You're like, you had to practice. So I think confidence. And the reason I like this one coach's idea, if you miss a lift, bye-bye.
Right.
Charlie Francis's great insight. If you get a personal record, practice is over. We're done for the day.
Yeah.
So those are two kind of weird extremes, aren't they? But I think they're both right. There's nothing wrong with that. I think opposite things all the time are okay. So in one hand, if you miss a lift, you're done. Mm-hmm. On the other, if you get a personal record, you're done. Well, that just eliminated. So from what this means to me is that we're going to control your arousal and your confidence and reward you, in a sense, by elite performance. Mm-hmm. So confidence is a tough one. I mean, because it's like, you ever seen a bad dancer?
I watch myself all the time.
Okay, so that concept called rhythm, yeah, you can see when it's done well and you can see it when it's done badly, but explain to someone who dances poorly how to dance well. To me, confidence is on that same path. You know it when you see it, and you know it when you have it, but that road to it is a little vague. I mean, that might make a great next book for me,
There you go.
Search for Confidence.
Uh-huh. Yeah, from a lot of the people that I respect most, it sounds like the biggest piece in confidence is knowing yourself, and you can't know yourself without having a wide range of experiences in whatever discipline or part of life that you're talking about. So your example was you became confident after tens of thousands of throws. So by having a huge range of experiences as a thrower, you start to really, really know yourself.
There's the mistake, I think, by having your child focus on one sport.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get you can be really good. You can be the best 12-year-old, You ever seen the trophies these kids get now for middle school?
It's 100 times bigger than that one.
I know. That's the only trophy I had until high school. But you're right, these parents who make their kids only do one sport, they're not giving the child a chance to learn confidence. I always tell people, if you go to high school, we have failed you if you never spoke in front of your peers. To stand up in front of your peers and say something that might even be controversial. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to stand up on a Friday night after a win. Let's go kick Terranova's ass. Sorry. But that's easy to say. But it's real hard to stand up in front of your peers and say, our behavior after the game is not who we are. Mm-hmm. Now that kid, I'll hand the keys to the car to. Right. So I think you need to be able to stand up in front of your peers. You need to be able to, know how to do a term paper. But all those things build up this confidence in life. I make my living writing books and, writing articles, and I gotta tell you, man, the world goes out of its way to knock your legs out for a minute. You go on and you read these reviews about your work, and it's like, I wrote this article, a blog piece one time about, it was a year after I lost 22 friends in literally about 1 second. They got hit by a rocket-propelled grenade in a helicopter. They all died. And a year later, I wrote this, kind of thing about. So one of the guys, John, had written me a series of emails, and I kept them. And so I quoted a few of his emails. And can I swear?
Yeah, absolutely.
Some punk wrote, I thought this was a fucking blog about strength training. I mean, that thing just sat there, and it's like, I looked at it, and I deleted it because I worried about John's friends or parents reading it, Sorry about all the cars. I worried about John's friends or even my friends reading it. But, it did. It knocked my legs out from under me. Because I took that, it wasn't was it a criticism or just someone was just an anonymous jerk?
Right.
I don't care. So that's what you face in this world. I tell you one thing, if you want to be great, you're going to constantly be dealing with people. It's like a scene from a monster movie where, the hands are coming up from the pit trying to drag you down. Whenever you try to be great in anything, people's hands are trying to drag you down into the muck and mire constantly. And it's tough. But so when you're talking about trying to build a kid's confidence, here we are at this 1 hour practice trying to build a kid's confidence. And then on the ride home with his friends, his buddies are saying, class kiss or whatever it is, Or like what happened when I was coaching at Judge Memorial, one of the parents told a van load of kids that the reason my athletes were so good is because I gave them steroids. And I thought, oh my God, the last thing. I mean, look at Nelson. Does he look like he's been on steroids? I mean, God. Oh, sorry, that was nice. That was me. It's always funny. I'd look at my athletes and say, God, if you think these guys are on steroids, I mean, you're really missing the point. We can keep going a little bit longer?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe another 2-3 minutes, and we can finish up after if you want. Okay, sorry. Come on in, guys. Guys, come in. Come in.
So yeah, let's finish up with a few quick ones, more less about athletics, more about life.
Sure.
If you could tell 21-year-old Dan John, something about living a better life, what would that be?
Well, he was a pretty smart kid. When I was in the 8th grade, I once told my parents that I knew everything, kind of all the big things in life. I knew how to fold clothes. I knew how to do laundry. I knew how to cook. I didn't know how to drive. But I knew all the basics already. And the thing I tell 21-year-old Dan John is that you have time, but so what you'd have is the problem. Let's go back to this earlier thing. You'd have a 60-year-old king talking to a 21-year-old warrior, and he wouldn't be able to hear me. But what I would tell him would be probably two things. At the back of the discus ring, he needed to get off his left foot sooner. That'd have been a huge, big help for him. And then his off season needed to be more bodybuilding. He didn't ever take any time off. So I would try to convince him. The 1 year he took time off after he got hit in the head with the discus because he had to, and just basic, simple, old school lifting, he had the best season of that part of his life. So it would be those two things. He wouldn't listen to anything. He would not have listened to anything else. And I would have told him to say, when you're 29 and 51 weeks, and your assistant coach tells you once, twice, 3 times, please come to a party with me. I'm getting set up with this girl. Say yes and go. Okay?
I got 2 more for you.
Okay.
What advice would you have for people that just want to be happier? What one piece of advice do you have?
Oh, you'll never make yourself happy. Go make other people happy. Then you'll be happy.
Boom. Love it.
Mic, boom, drop. Yeah. You'll never make yourself happy. All you can do is go out there and make the world a better place.
Get outside of yourself. Yeah. What 2 or 3 resources would you recommend people seek out for some of those timeless principles related to strength and conditioning?
In my books or just in the world?
Anything.
Yeah, I would say Tommy Kono's first book on Olympic lifting is genius. Well, this is where I always get kind of floopity. I think Pat Flynn's book, Paleo Fitness for Dummies, stupidest title of a book of all time, is just a good one-stop shop for good books. And I'll be honest with you, I think my book, Now What? Can You Go Intervention, but are fine. All the other books are collections, but Now What summarizes his performance and shark habit thing, okay?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to leave these listeners with?
Well, we tapped onto it a few times in this talk, but, if you can, go. If you want to be a better Olympic lifter, teach someone the Olympic lifts. You want to be better at kettlebell swings, teach the kettlebell swing. If you want to deal with a problem in the world, go out there and try to fix it, and it'll all sort of return to you. Life is good. Yeah. Well, my one little goal in life is to leave this planet just a touch better. Just a tiny bit better, maybe 1 tree, but so that's what I would tell people. Make a difference any way you can.
Well, thank you, Coach. I really appreciate everything.
Let's get a workout in, okay?
Let's do it.
All right.